Welcome to the INFOWARS Nightly News. I'm David Knight. It's Monday, June 1st, 2015. Here are our top stories.
Tonight, what would happen if the Patriot Act disappeared? Then, the truth about Dennis Hastert. And vaccines hurting children finally goes mainstream. That's next on the INFOWARS Nightly News.
I'm correct. I'm vindicated. Where are the apologies? Where? Where are they? They're nowhere. And let me tell all the neocons and fake right-wingers and fake liberals.
Rand Paul fired a very important shot across the bow of the surveillance state this weekend. He delayed the passage of the Patriot Act until it expired. Now, that's not going to stop them from spying, of course. They have violated the law for a very long time, going all the way back to the Frank Church committee hearings, as well as the Pike committee hearings in the House. We learned back in the 70s that the NSA was spying on our phone calls at that time. Of course, they didn't have the kind of technology to leverage at that time that made them so dangerous. It's very important that people wake up, and it's very important to remove that legal cover. The next time you hear Marco Rubio or Lindsey Graham or Richard Burr brag about how we need to have this surveillance state, fear-mongering about how we need to have this surveillance state, remember the lies that we've been told by them, the lies that have been exposed. Now, we played a couple of months ago a clip and analyzed Michael Hayden, the former NSA director, talking to students at Washington and Lee University and essentially kind of going on a supervillain monologue. Here's a little bit of that clip.
A lot of commentary was made about Jim Clapper and the question from Ron Wyden on that, you know, about mass bulk collection and so on. Jim's answer was horrible, all right? And Jim's an honest guy. He just hosed it horribly.
Yeah, he lied. Let's continue. He hosed it because he flat out lied under oath. But of course, if you're part of the intelligence community, you won't go to jail for lying under oath.
Jim's answer was not as bad as Ron Wyden's question.
Oh, it's the question that's the problem.
I don't really know what a dossier is in this context. So what I wanted to see is if you could give me a yes or no answer to the question, does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?
No, sir.
It does not.
Not wittingly. There are cases where they could inadvertently, perhaps, collect, but not wittingly.
Everyone on that dais knew the correct answer to that question. Everyone behind everyone on that dais, the staffers, knew the answer to that question. They all knew the 215 program. Ron Wyden was trying to trick Jim Clapper into making an admission of classified information that Ron Wyden didn't have the courage to make himself.
Okay, so he says that all the senators, all their staffers knew that the 215 program was being abused. And I agree with him. Ron Wyden should have come out and said it. But I think it's a bit more interesting to hear the head of the NSA lie to Congress, lie to the American people. The whole program is a lie. The way that they're using the 215 section that they were given under the Patriot Act, even if that were constitutional, they're still exceeding their authority because that was supposed to be going after people that essentially you could get a search warrant for. Although you didn't have to go before a real judge, you just had to go before the FISA judge. But listen to what else he has to say.
Why was Wyden trying to get Clapper to say what he was saying? Because Wyden, in the committee, was losing the vote on 215 consistently 15-2.
So you put those two clips together and you understand that all the senators knew what was going on that were in the Senate Intelligence Committee. They knew that 215 was being abused, that they were going beyond their legal authority, which went beyond their constitutional authority. Their staffers knew. And Ron Wyden could not get them to do the right thing. 15-2, they were going to allow this continued abuse by the intelligence community. That's what he's saying. He's really making a case for how corrupt the Senate is. And it's gotten even worse. Ron Wyden is no longer there, and now we have Senator Burr from North Carolina who says he doesn't think there should be any public oversight of anything the intelligence community does. Listen to this last clip here.
Oh, your talk today about 215? 215 is such a safe haven. 215 is legislated by Congress. I was doing metadata collection under the President's raw Article 2 authorities from October 7th, 2001 forward.
Catch that? Look at the smug expression on his face. He's so happy. He didn't need any 215. I don't need no stinking law. I'm a law unto myself. I take orders directly from the President. Or maybe he gives orders directly to the President. Who knows? They do whatever they wish. He doesn't need the 215. He doesn't need a law from Congress. He doesn't need the Patriot Act. And he could care less about the Constitution. Listen to what else he has to say.
The 215 program doesn't begin with the Patriot Act. It begins with the private order I got from President Bush. And we decided it was lawful and consistent with the President's authorities as Commander-in-Chief.
Yeah, we decided what the law is. They did it in secret. And of course, you're not going to be allowed to know anything that he does because that would hurt his effectiveness.
So remember that when you hear them tell you that we have to have this or we're going to have terrorist attacks. They were lying about it then, and as you saw in that clip, Michael Hayden says, how dare Ron Wyden force James Clapper to lie in front of everybody? Ron Wyden, he said, knew what was going on. All the staffers knew what was going on. All of the other senators knew what was going on. And he did that because they were all on board with the lies that the NSA is telling you. But of course, now they're going to tell you to watch your back. We're at the mercy of the terrorists. We're at the mercy of the boogeymen. Understand, the biggest conspiracy theorists, the biggest fear mongers are the conservatives who support the surveillance state. But look at some of the jokes that people have made about this, because it really is a joke. We have an article up on INFOWARS.com. What will happen if the Patriot Act expires? So take a look at some of these cartoons. Of course, you're going to have the ISIS flag flying over the White House. You're going to have the Death Star cut loose on the U.S., on the entire world. You've got a shot there from Independence Day where the lightning beam comes down just before the White House itself explodes. And then my favorite, you've got the zombie, the giant zombie, bin Laden, will rise from the dead and will terrorize America. Yeah. And you know what? That's not that much of an exaggeration from what they are telling us. Rand Paul put it this way.
People here in town think I'm making a huge mistake. Some of them, I think, secretly want there to be an attack on the United States so they can blame it on me. One of the people in the media the other day came up to me and said, oh, well, when there's a great attack, aren't you going to feel guilty that you caused this great attack? And it's like, the people who attack us are responsible for attacks on us. Do we blame the police chief for the attack of the Boston bombers? The thing is that there can be attacks even if we use the Constitution, but there have been attacks while collecting your bulk data. So the ones who say, well, when an attack occurs, it's going to be all your fault, are any of them willing to accept the blame? We have bulk collection now. Are any of them willing to accept the blame for the Boston bombing, for the recent shooting in Garland? No, but they'll be the first to point fingers and say, oh, yeah, it's all your fault. We never should have given up on this great program. I'm completely convinced that we can the Constitution, use the Fourth Amendment as intended, spirit and letter of the law, and catch terrorists.
So remember that in spite of these Michael Hayden confessions, in spite of the revelations from Edward Snowden, in spite of the fact that we had conservatives wringing their hands after the Snowden revelation saying, now all of our enemies know exactly what we're doing. Now the tack that they're taking 2 years on is just to boldly lie about it as if they were Bill Clinton caught red-handed in an affair. And of course, one of the lead players is one of the guys running for president, Marco Rubio. Here's Jakari Jackson's report on that.
The perception has been created, including by political figures that serve in this chamber, that the United States government is listening to your phone calls or going through your bills as a matter of course. That is absolutely categorically false. The next time that any politician, senator, congressman, talking head, whatever it may be, stands up and says that the U.S. government is listening to your phone calls or going through your phone records, they're lying. It just is not true. Except for some very isolated instances, in the hundreds, of individuals for whom there is reasonable suspicion that they could have links to terrorism.
That was Senator Marco Rubio trying to assure you that nobody is monitoring your activities and anybody who tells you otherwise is being untruthful. Well, I'm very curious if Mr. Rubio knows about the remarks of the former CIA chief in Wired magazine bragging about how they'll spy on you through your dishwasher. And I'll be the first person to tell you, I don't believe everything that comes out of the CIA, but I can believe this because it wasn't something that they got caught doing and had to own up to it. It was something that they were bragging about and actually very proud of. Yes, there are people who do terrorist activities who are being monitored, but plenty of everyday people as well. And I'm limiting my list of examples to a few. There are plenty other ones that you guys can easily find on the internet. Just look into, there's actually a movie that came out, Terms and Conditions May Apply, where there's a gentleman, I believe he was a writer for CSI or one of those crime stories or crime shows, and he was doing searches on how to murder somebody and get away with it, and somebody shows up to his house. Are you trying to kill your wife? This really happened, and that's just one example. But now let's talk about things that happened around the Boston bombing. We'll start with this clip.
Anyway, now I guess it was a voicemail. They could try to get the phone companies to give that up at this point. But if it's not a voicemail, it's just a conversation. There's no way they actually can find out what happened, right? Unless she tells them.
No, there is a way. We certainly have ways in national security investigations to find out exactly what was said in that conversation.
The point I'm trying to make with this clip is that these guys had their conversations recorded before they were listed as suspects. It's not just the Tsarnaev brothers, it's you as well. And anybody said, well, I don't care about that because they're guilty of sin or whatever else. Well, how about this lady? This is a woman in Long Island. Her family had a visit by police officers because after the Boston bombing, they just happened to be searching for pressure cookers and backpacks. And then John Law came and knocked on their door. Once again, these people were no official suspects in any crime, which means people were monitoring their activities. And that's just one example. So with that being said, any of these guys who are trying to convince you, including Marco Rubio, that nobody is monitoring your telephone conversations or your internet traffic or looking at things on your phone, if they wanted to, could they do that? Absolutely. Keep that in mind as things go forward, and you can find more reports on the Alex Jones channel on YouTube.
So in spite of the fact that they've been doing dragnet surveillance, they haven't been able to prevent something like the Boston bombing. And of course, all of the so-called terrorist events that they have stopped have essentially been created by the FBI. Nevertheless, when we come back from break, we're going to look at something that would really protect you that they want to keep secret. Of course, our government is now removing data that shows how people have been harmed by vaccines. That's something that could help you, not the surveillance state. Stay with us. We're going to be right back. Now, the same government that tells you they need to capture all of your personal information, store it, and analyze it for your safety, of course, also is the same government that is wiping out information showing how people have been harmed by vaccines. Of course, we have a vaccine court in this country that was created back in 1986. It was done because there were so many claims against the vaccine companies. They were afraid that they would drive big pharmaceutical out of business, or at least hurt its profits. So basically, if you're harmed by vaccines, you go to this vaccine court, which is essentially a judge making a single determination, not a real trial where you could get full compensation. Now, in this vaccine court, they have, as these cases come in, they publish the number of cases and what they're referring to. And they're now scrubbing the last couple of years of data. This is from Cheryl Atkinson. She was a reporter, of course, for mainstream media. She was an establishment reporter. She got tired of the lying going on there. She's doing her own investigation work, some good investigation work here. Government wipes recent vaccine injury data from the website. They say a recent rise in vaccine victims' court decisions and concessions are not reflected in the revised government data. In March, the federal government removed the latest vaccine injury court statistics, more than a year's worth of data, from one of its publicly reported charts. It was an abrupt departure from the normal practice of updating the figures monthly. Wiping the latest data means the adjudication chart on a government website no longer reflects the recent sharp rise in court victories for plaintiffs who claim the children were seriously injured or killed by the vaccines. She says since January of 2014, twice as many victims have won court decisions than in the previous 8 years combined. Let me repeat that. Twice as many victims have won court decisions since January of 2014 than in the previous 8 years combined. So we have a judge that ruled the evidence showed that vaccines are more likely than not cause the plaintiff's injuries. That's when they win the case. She says also on the rise is a number of vaccine injury cases that the government has conceded. That is up 50%.